38%, which is the system which prevails now, till such a time that we repay the loan. And after that, there will not be a cess. And those items which were with compensation cess have already been proposed to be at 40% because they are sin goods rate. They are, as I said, 40% is not part of the scheme of things, it's at the extreme. No other good will go there except for these tobacco-related products. So they will be, the incidence will be on them at 40%. Revenue neutrality.
No, I didn't get the question. Revenue neutral would mean what? No, but what? Can you explain your question? What revenue neutral would mean?
Down from 15.5, the average rate, what would it be after these reductions?
It will obviously depend upon how the transactions happen. So consumption, I am assuming what you are saying is the total value of transaction total tax collected divided by total value of transaction. So that is something one can calculate historically. For the future, as I said, we expect a lot of effects of buoyancy, compliance, consumer behavior. So this number is going to be obviously something which we'll get to as we reach there.
238.
Ansel Magazine from Indian Express. Just a clarification on the tobacco part, because I believe when GST was rolled out, Center had the powers to levy NCCD on tobacco. So how will it get levied on, say, something like pan masala? If you could elaborate that. And secondly, was there any decision regarding electric vehicles? Because that was also one of the proposals submitted by the GUM.
See, on the pan masala, tobacco and everything else, under the GST, till such a time the loan is repaid, as I said, the 28% plus the compensation cess will run. Once I clear the loan, they all come to 40%. And that's what is the GST.
EV remains at where it was. Yes, it remains at where it was, 5.
214.
चूंकि अभी काफ़ी खबर चल रही थी कि जो 2500 जो अभी ब्रांडेड 1000 रुपये से ऊपर का जो शर्ट एंड फुटवेयर्स है, मैं राजीव हूँ सर दैनिक जागरण से, तो उस पे उसको 2500 उसकी सीमा की जा रही थी। जो 2500 से ऊपर है उन पे ज़्यादा टैक्स लगेगा, तो ऐसा कुछ हुआ या अब सब पे जो भी फुटवेयर और गारमेंट्स होंगे 1000 रुपये से ऊपर के भी उन पे भी सिर्फ 5% ही लगेगा? इस पे कुछ फैसला हुआ? नंबर 1। नंबर 2 सर कि स्मॉल कार, मिड साइज कार, तो क्या इसमें 1200 सीसी से ऊपर वाले सभी कार पे 40% लगेगा?
जहाँ तक फुटवेयर का सवाल है, आज के दिन 2 रेट्स थे। 1000 रुपये से कम वालों के ऊपर 12% और 1000 रुपये से ऊपर वाले के ऊपर 18% लगता था। तो जो चेंज किए गए हैं, जैसे आपको ज्ञात है कि मैडम ने पहले बताया कि 12% का रेट अभी नहीं है। तो 2 रेट जो अभी हैं वो 5 और 18 के हैं। 5% पे जो 2500 से कम वाली वस्तु है, वाले फुटवेयर हैं, और 18% पे जो 2500 से ऊपर वाली वस्तु है। आपका दूसरा सवाल किस चीज़ से? हाँ, मैडम ने आपको बताया कि छोटी कारें जो हैं वो 18 पे होंगी और बाकी सारी कारें जो हैं वो 40 पे होंगी। डेफिनेशन तो आई थॉट वो तो डिपार्टमेंट MHRD मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ रोड ट्रांसपोर्ट रेगुलेटर का है। पेट्रोल की 1200 सीसी और डीजल की 1500 सीसी, और उसके साथ शायद लेंथ का भी एक लिमिटेशन होता है। तो जो उनका रेगुलेशंस के हिसाब से छोटी कारें हैं वो हमारी 18 पे रहेंगी। हम लोग अलग से कोई नया डेफिनेशन उसका नहीं बना रहे।
45.
I had a related question on hotels and on air travel. Again, there were 2 classifications there. So, and I think all these would be in the detailed press release that you'd be issuing, but if you could just help us.
269.
Thank you, ma'am. This is Girish from Mint.
Ma'am, some states had suggested that there could be a new duty imposed on, items on the 28%, which will move to 40%. Has that been considered? And secondly, ma'am, there is no cess applicable on high-end cars, which has moved to 40%, right, ma'am?
So an item has moved to 40%, there's nothing more to be added. Because the maximum rate which you can levy on a car, on any item is 40%. And in the 40% category, we put all the tobacco and tobacco related sin goods and super luxury items. only.
Number 3.
Hello, ma'am. This is Priyoshmita from Informist Media. Ma'am, first I wanted a clarification. I was still looking at discontinuing compensation cess around November, as in, is that the timeline we are following to repay the loans? And secondly, states had pitched for some kind of a mechanism to compensate them after the rate changes are effective because of the revenue loss. So has there been any discussion, and is the center looking at something on those lines? Thank you.
I think I've mentioned it clearly, till such a time that the loans don't get repaid. We will continue with the 28% items and the compensation cess collection over it, particularly only those items which I read out, tobacco related products, and they will continue till such a time I repay the loan, which is the council has authorized the finance minister to stop that collection the moment the loan is repaid. I cannot speculate on the time now whether it is October or November, but it'll be well within, I think, this calendar year.
Number 2.
I think, first of all, I would like to request the media to look at the GST Council as where the center and the states are seated together. I mentioned this in the council also. The center may be a 1/3 partner, the states put together can be 2/3 partner. But we're all in it together. So anything that which is gained or lost is for everybody. It's not as though states have lost, the center's not gained. If all of us have lost, all of us have lost. And I don't think, and I'm glad that the Revenue Secretary had made this point in the council, it's a revenue instance. The incidence is what is the matter. It's not a static situation. Once the rates have come down per the economic theory that you may want to quote, the buoyancy goes up. People come out to buy more. And therefore, this discussion has happened in today's council. And I have put this argument before, that the center and the states are seated equally. And any gain or any foregone, none of that is perceived, because when rates are coming down, we expect the market to be more buoyant, people to come out and spend more. However, all of us are sitting there together. Compensate for states' loss, even center is losing. If anything, center loses more in a way. Because 50-50, you divide from my 50, another 41 goes back to the states. So I want the media, particularly those who are covering the economy, finance ministry, to understand in the GST Council, the center and the states are together in it. Nobody is a donor and nobody is a donee within the GST Council.
Number 2.
Pallavi from.
Can I just supplement, because this issue has come from many. So our earlier request was, there are two parts to this issue, and I just request the indulgence of the media also on this. This repeated use of the word called revenue loss. So obviously somebody has lost to somebody or something to that effect. Kindly understand, this is a tax rationalization exercise which is resulting in reduction of rates of taxes to be paid, let us say, by a common man. rates paid by food, on health, on agricultural implements, on labor-oriented sectors like job work. I'm not very sure whether loss is the right interpretation of government saying that we have given money to a consumer. It is the economy that we are talking about. Both of them are there. After all, the money which government will not collect as tax is going to be remaining in the pockets of that consumer who will end up using it. So my request is this terminology loss, because it presents the impression differently from, and which is why I had requested. There is a revenue implication naturally. So the second part to this understanding is that revenue implication is a dynamic number because it will depend on how response happens. Mathematically, one can calculate that can only be done on historical data. But that historical data may not end up to be true because we do expect behavior of consumer changing, buoyancy factors changing, compliance improving, and this has been the historical reality. You would remember that after compensation cess went away, the buoyancies really went up of GST. So we do expect things to move in the positive direction. We have done our numbers and we believe it is fiscally sustainable. The number that I told you is based on 23-24. And even with projections and expectation on other things turning in the positive side, which we are hearing both from the consumers as well as from the industry, we expect this exercise to be fiscally sustainable.
I'm Pallavi from CNN News 18. Ma'am, two things over here. There were 8 states which actually said that we want something called the state level GST on products like alcohol, petrol, and real estate. Was this even discussed at the GST meeting today? And second is that they are all talking, I'm sorry to use that word, but revenue loss. 15,000 crore revenue loss is what Siddaramaiah said. I know there are states like Karnataka and Kerala who insisted on that, and I think that is why your meeting was delayed. How do you want to actually address that? Because many of them are also facing problems like they're talking about floods. And finally, when you are talking about a GST restructuring, was the tariff turmoil with America an important consideration?
The tariff turmoil is not a matter which influenced the GST reform because we've been at it now for more than 1.5 years. Some group of ministers was working on rate rationalization. Some other group of ministers a bit later was working on insurance and so on. And compensation cess was a reality that it is going to end the moment you paid back the loan. None of this has anything to do with the tariffs. So, no, there's nothing to do with the tariffs at all. One. Second, you were talking about petrol, diesel, 8 states. None of that was subject of our discussion because that is not part of the GST Council at all. And the third, numbers are being thrown around. This much loss, that much loss. You've just heard the Revenue Secretary detail on the basis of 23-24 numbers. Am I right? 23-24 data, which is the last available for all the categories. And he stated what is the net amount that we'll have to be looking at. So there is nothing more. I'm not going to join forces to argue on, oh, somebody said this much, somebody else said that much. Our data is here, we put it, and that is coming out to all of you all as well in the press note.
237.
मैम तरुण शर्मा फ्रॉम जी बिजनेस। मैम 2 सवाल हैं, एक क्लैरिटी के लिए पूछना चाहूँगा। जो टैक्स इंसिडेंस है, आपने कहा कि हाईएस्ट ब्रैकेट जो रहेगा वो 40% रहेगा, तो जो अभी तक सेस लगता था वो नहीं लगेगा। अब जो भी चीज़ें होंगी वो मैक्सिमम 40% पे होगी टबैको प्रोडक्ट्स को छोड़ के। और दूसरा सवाल मैम, जो अनमैन्ड एयरक्राफ्ट्स, एक ड्रोन के लिए भी एक एजेंडा था, क्या मैम उस पर भी कोई फैसला हो पाया? एक चीज़ मैम, एक क्लैरिटी और चाहेंगे कि जो डीलर्स के पास अभी गाड़ियां खड़ी हैं, यदि वो 22 तारीख से पहले 22 तारीख के बाद बिकती हैं तो वो किस कैटेगरी में आएंगी? क्या जो अभी का जो टैक्स स्ट्रक्चर है उसमें कैलकुलेट की जाएंगी या नए वाले टैक्स स्ट्रक्चर में कैलकुलेट की?
शुरू में जैसे माननीय मंत्री ने आपको बताया कि ये हमारा अब 2 रेट जीएसटी स्ट्रक्चर हो गया है, तो 5 और 18 आर द रेट्स. 40 is what we consider it as a special rate, and on the lower side, apart from exemption, there are some other special rates. Special rates are meant to take care of either very, very unique sectors or unique requirements or certain policy positions that government may have had on those. Typically, these special rates are considered special because they are not by their very nature part of a general structure. So they are not expected to be open-ended. It is not like this is a rate, then you can swing people things between here and there. 40 is expected, items have been identified and positioned there. This is the way in which, that is why this is called GST rate rationalization structure. So it's a rate structure itself which has been rationalized, within which then certain principles have been followed to fit things. That is point number one. What was the second question? I would suggest that specific items and procedural issues off the cuff response will not be a good idea. Department will be issuing detailed instructions about everything, and we will see to it that those who need it receive it in transparent fashion, in a timely fashion. वही जो आपने बताया ना, ट्रांजिशन वाले जितने इश्यूज हैं इम्प्लीमेंटेशन रिलेटेड, आज जीएसटी काउंसिल का डिसीजन हुआ है, तो उसको ऑफ द कफ रिस्पांस देना ठीक नहीं होगा. वो हमारे डिपार्टमेंट डिटेल में सारे इश्यूज को एड्रेस करते हुए जवाब देगा उसका. और आज इसके बाद मैडम ने जैसे इंस्ट्रक्शन दिया है, एक फ्रीक्वेंटली आस्क्ड क्वेश्चंस का एक लिस्ट भी इशू होगा, प्रेस नोट होगा, जिसमें सारे डिटेल्स होंगे आइटम वाइज, जो आप देख सकते.
189.
मैम, मैं आलोक प्रियदर्शी CNBC आवाज से. सबसे पहले जीएसटी काउंसिल के चेयरपर्सन के तौर पर आपको बताएं कि आपने पूरे कंसेंसस के साथ ही इसका लागू करवाया. मेरा सवाल ये है कि रेट में कटौती हुई है, सबको फायदा होगा, लेकिन ये रेट आम आदमी तक इसका फायदा पहुंचे, उसके लिए क्या कोई मैकेनिज्म बनाया जाएगा? कि एंटी प्रॉफिटिंग मैकेनिज्म अभी है नहीं, या ऐसी एंटी प्रॉफिटिंग बॉडी है नहीं, तो कैसे इसको रेट को हम जो कंज्यूमर है उस तक पहुंचाएंगे ताकि कंपनी इसमें बेनिफिट ना करे, ग्राहकों तक उनका फायदा पहुंचे?
हमने
सर हिंदी में बता दीजिए.
एंट्री प्रॉफिटियरिंग का हम लोगों ने जैसे अभी थोड़ी देर पहले जो उत्तर दिया, उसमें बताया कि पिछली बार जब ये एक्ट में एक प्रोविजन था, उस प्रावधान के अंतर्गत 704 केसेस रजिस्टर हुए थे कुल मिला के, जिसके करीब 60% केसेस पहले 3 से 4 साल में थे, जब उम्मीद होती है कि ये इश्यूज आते हैं ज़्यादा. और टोटल जो प्रॉफिटियरिंग का अमाउंट एलेज किया गया था इन इश्यूज के ऊपर, वो 4,362 करोड़ का था. तो इन फिगर्स को देखकर ऐसा नहीं लगता है कि इंडस्ट्री ने ट्रांसमिशन में बहुत ज़्यादा कोई मतलब इश्यूज आए, कंसिडरिंग द स्केल ऑफ द एक्सरसाइज. तो इस बार भी हम लोगों को ये काफ़ी कॉन्फिडेंस है कि इंडस्ट्री रेट्स को ट्रांसमिट करेगा. पब्लिकली काफ़ी मेजर सेक्टर्स की इंडस्ट्री ने ऑलरेडी ये पब्लिकली कहा है, कमिट किया है कि हम इस रेट को ट्रांसमिट करेंगे. इकोनॉमिकली ऑल्सो हमें लगता है कि फोर्सेस ऑफ मार्केट कंपटीशन विल वर्क इन दैट डायरेक्शन. एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिवली CBIC और स्टेट लेवल पे वी आर एंगेजिंग एंड गोइंग टू एंगेज विद इंडस्ट्रीज टू सी दैट द बेनिफिट जो गवर्नमेंट कमिटेड है इस बात के लिए कि ये कंज्यूमर तक पहुंचे, वो पहुंचाने के तरीके देखे जाएंगे.
49.
Prakash Priyadarshi from ET now. So what will be the overall impact on GDP after implementing this rate rationalization decision?
Again, something on which you like to speculate on. It depends on how people have received this rate reduction. And they'll have to come out and once you have a couple of months going with all the purchases, then we'll be able to get some number. It'll be too much for me to speculate on it now, but I think it'll have a very positive impact on the GDP.
209.
Prashant Sahu from Financial Express. So the rate reductions will have a positive impact on the consumption, and it will also help widen the taxpayer base. So the revenue implication, as the secretary said, is about 48,000 crore. So as per your calculations, how soon it will be, neutralized, given that the buoyancy will be there, consumption will increase, and the taxpayer base will widen?
There seems to be different ways of asking the same question, which is already answered. I don't think you got what I explained. I did not say 48,000 is an implication for this year. I said 23-24 data of consumption says, if you calculate with that consumption being what it is going to cost 48,000 crore. But then I also supplemented it by saying that these numbers will be dynamic because of the parameters I explained. So we'll have to see as we go along, as we go further. But as Madam said, it is going to have a positive impact on economy. We are hopeful, and we do believe that this is going to be positively taken in both by the business, trade, industry, as well as consumers.
184.
मैम जय मिश्र दूरदर्शन से प्रधानमंत्री जी का भी रिएक्शन आ गया, उन्होंने आपको बधाई दी है, जो जीएसटी काउंसिल है उसके सभी सदस्यों को बधाई दी है, लेकिन सबसे लास्ट में उन्होंने कहा है कि ये रिफॉर्म्स छोटे और मध्यम उद्योगों को ईज ऑफ लिविंग में मदद करेंगे, तो ये शायद संदेश पहुंचना चाहिए, उस पर मैं थोड़ा सा आपसे क्लैरिफिकेशन है, कैसे फायदा पहुंचाएगा एमएसएमई सेक्टर को?
एमएसएमईज को बहुत सारे फायदा है इसमें, क्योंकि अपने शुरुआत में से ही हम बोल रहे हैं, वो आपको मैंने इस प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में भी कही, स्ट्रक्चरल रिफॉर्म भी किए हैं, कंप्लायंसेस के लिए उनको बहुत समय नहीं लगेगा और सिस्टम भी सिंपल हो गया है, रजिस्ट्रेशन भी सिंपल है, और क्लासिफिकेशन के वजह से जो कंफ्यूजन आता था वो भी अभी नहीं होना है। ऊपर से इन्वर्शन करेक्शन जब हम कर रहे हैं, रिफंड्स तुरंत मिलेगा, और जहां इन्वर्शन नहीं है पैसा लॉक नहीं होएगा, मतलब मंथ तक यू वेट करो, आई मीन you have put the money in, you're not getting the refund, वो सिचुएशन अभी नहीं। लॉक्ड अप मनी का प्रॉब्लम जो एमएसएमई को बार बार आता है वो नहीं होने वाले। ऊपर से उनका रॉ मटेरियल और उनका इंटरमीडिएरी प्रोडक्ट्स जो उनके लिए चाहिए वो सब रेट में कम हो रही है, इसीलिए उनका पूरे बेनिफिट ही ऐसे मैं समझ रही।
188.
Hello, ma'am. This is Suchandra, I'm from INS. So is there any changes in GST filing?
Is there any rate changes in the GST filing? Of course there.
प्रोसेस आप बताना चाहेंगे? रजिस्ट्रेशन
देखिए, इसमें जैसे regarding the process reforms, many steps have been taken. One is that GST registration process has been simplified for especially for small businesses or where they are trusted applicants. So small businesses who on their own assessment estimate that they will not be passing on more than 2.5 lakh of input tax credit, they can opt for that simplified registration, and that registration will be granted within 3 working days automatically by the system itself. And in case then after obtaining this registration, if they grow and they want to transition to the normal registration, for that again there is a provision, and based on the risk analysis for the normal category of registration, they can be transitioned to the normal category. Similarly, there is a process reform which has been approved by the GST Council or recommended by the GST Council. It's regarding the refund in case of zero-rated supplies. There, presently, there is a provision of granting of 90% the claimed amount on provisional basis. Now, GST Council has recommended amendment in the rule, and which prescribes that on the basis of identification as risk evaluation by the system, this 90% amount can be granted within the 7 days by the officer. So earlier, using that provision, the percentage noticed by us was very less. But with this amendment in the rule, the percentage will go up substantially. In addition to that, in case of inverted duty structure, refund can be claimed